Presented by Brothers Truck Parts. Here's HE&M Solves Project Hudson Hornet.
Now we're going to be restoring the engine on this Hudson Hornet, and while we do that, we're going to always add a little bit more horsepower. So when we add more horsepower, we're going to need more stopping power. Right now we're going to show you guys how to change out the bushings and the lower control arms, stuff like that on this car. And we're going to be doing an 11-inch front disc brake conversion from Cancer Auto Parts. That's going to give us more stopping power.
That'd be great, because when my father owned his car, he always was known to drive fast, and that would keep him from going through the weeds.
This car is 65 years old. Back in those days, they must have had nothing but dirt roads, because it's going to take a good couple hours of you chiseling all the road and grime off of this knuckle and control arm and kingpin to be able to even get to the hardware, to be able to spray them with penetration and get them loosened. And the last thing you guys want to do is use air tools in this case. You want to expose your hardware, use penetrating grease, and then use hand tools, because the last thing we want to do is create friction, right?
Absolutely.
You know, it's a good idea to put a trash can that's pretty much empty underneath what you're doing, because there's going to be a lot of debris getting on the floor, and God forbid something fall in there while you're working, a nut or bolt or washer. You don't want that to be lost in the trash. Now once we get all this crud knocked off, it's going to expose our hardware, then we can get started on our bushing replacement. So in order to give us better access to this knuckle area, and we're doing a disc brake conversion, we're going to remove this entire assembly. And the brake lines and hard lines, we're not going to reuse them. They're already seized. Doug's going to go ahead and cut them and get them out of our way. What we did was sprayed a little bit of penetrating oil on the gunk. That will wetten and loosen them up. That was Doug's recommendation, and it's going to work well. So now we've got the whole knuckle exposed, and we can go ahead and start cleaning it up, getting our hardware off. Now this is much different than what we're normally used to. You guys who work on these newer cars, even me, I was stunned to see this type of engineering. The bolt that holds the upper and lower bushing in place on the knuckle goes through the upper and lower control arms. Everything is threaded. The bushing in the center is threaded. Both sides of the upper and lower control arm are threaded, so you have to be very careful and do this diligently. Now that we've got our nuts off, we're ready to pull the knuckle off. And before we do that, even though we have a sway bar holding the control arm compressing the spring and a shock holding the control arms compressing the spring, those items are both old and we're not going to trust them. So we're going to put a jack underneath the lower control arm so that we can work with this and not have to worry about getting killed. Now what you want to do is on an older car, because there is so much grit and grime, you have to use penetrating grease, because you don't want friction to seize up hardware, right? And because everything is threaded,
Yep.
you have to go all the way with it.
Ah, yeah.
There we go. Okay, now we can take this guy to the parts washer and finish cleaning it up, making sure you keep an eye on what parts fall out, like this bushing that sandwiches in between the control arm and the knuckle itself, okay? Up here is a 13mm bolt. That's your alignment. This is a cam bolt. This is the alignment cam bolt. It is set from the factory. You don't need to touch this area unless you've got an issue and you have to do an alignment.
You know, Sam, there's just one thing about that. This is an old American car, so 13mm is actually a ½ inch.
Good job. Good job. He is right. So what Doug and I have already done is replace the sway bar bushings. We have removed the knuckle, and we're going to go ahead and replace the hardware for the upper and lower control arms bushing to the knuckle. Doug has done a great job of cleaning up the suspension and the control arm, and I went ahead and cleaned up the knuckle. And now we're going to go ahead and reassemble. But while we do that, Doug is going to go ahead and put a new tie rod end on that sleeve as well.
Yeah, in order to make the bushings fit correctly, they come oversized. So what you have to do is you're going to have to trim them to fit. So take your time as you're trimming them. Right there, let her go. That's the ticket.
And the new parts that we got from Cancer fit perfect. They're quality, just like OEM. I really like it.
I do too.
So now all we got to do is tighten that tie rod, install our shock, and we're ready for our front disc brake conversion.